Our life is not about making one perfect song. We can make millions of them. The song that we are working on currently is like a snapshot of who we are at this exact moment. If we let the perfectionism speak, I feel like the one song per life could become the reality. This week I started a challenge. 50 weeks, 50 tracks. And the goal is to force myself to create and, the most importantly, to finish more music. So I kicked it off, buzzing with excitement. Energy was amazing. And then, shortly after, the old familiar voice crept in. You know.
Hello, darkness, my old friend.
So the voice whispered, "This isn't good enough." And suddenly all the excitement was just mixed up with this known very well internal pressure. So today not only I'm sharing the first song from my challenge, but I'm also happy to show you 5 strategies that got me through the first week and helped me finish this track. I started this challenge to finally break free and show my work because I felt like the longer I kept it all secret, the more of a fraud I become and feel. So the moment I committed, and with the first track of the challenge, the fear came back stronger. And I found myself obsessing over the sound design and imagining this intense, awkward conversation I'm gonna have with all the people around because of my musical decisions. So I was just terrified to call the track Done, because done means that I need to upload it. And then after I upload it, it means that people can judge it. They can judge the mix, the arrangement, the emotion, the whole idea, and it was just too much. On the third day, I felt so bad, and when I opened my project file in Ableton, it was just irritating me, and decided to just close it because this whole project, the challenge, just felt like a mistake. And on day 4, I had to start over. I decided to switch my mindset from perfect to good enough. I had to remember that the goal is long-term growth, not perfection, because we can't correct things forever. But we should remember that the song that we are working on currently is like a snapshot of who we are at this exact moment. We just keep on growing, and it's okay to take our new skills and put them into the next project. Our life is not about making one perfect song. We can make 10,000 of them, and all it matters is that if we see our growth. If we let the perfectionism speak, it might actually turn like one lifetime cannot be even enough to make one perfect song. So on day 4, I listened to the audio from day 2, and I decided to just list 4 most important problems. Then I set a timer, 15 minutes for each of these problems. And I repeated this each day. The song is finished when I call it finished. So without big courage, I call it finished now. Actually, I'm proud of it, but not because it's the best song I have ever written, but because I'm one step closer to overcoming perfectionism. The good enough for now mindset. This is the first and the most important shift, because we need to get rid of the perfect and fully embrace the good enough for now. So the idea that a song can be flawless is, like harmful fantasy. Honestly, how many times did you overhear people discussing the sound design or the way the recent song is mixed? Don't count your nerdy friends, like the regular people, because I've never heard that. Art is about communication, not perfection. And if we're chasing some impossible standard, I'm not shocked that we're feeling trapped. The real goal should be to clearly express an idea, emotion, to make people feel something, to move them, to make them dance. So for this challenge, perfect is not an option. This deadline of 7 days per track forced me to focus on the core of the song. I asked myself some questions like, does the main idea work? Does it have the right energy? Does it communicate the feeling that I wanted to communicate? Then for each of the instruments, elements, are they really important for the track? Is the song captivating? So these are my personal criteria, and as soon as I was able to answer yes, then I would move on. Getting 80% of the impact comes from the first 20% of the effort. So here, the core melody, the chords, the groove, and the rest of the time that you spend on those tiny details, they yield smaller and smaller returns. And of course, everyone loves ear candy, but be honest, we cannot play 7 of them around the track because it doesn't do the trick anymore, right? So I had to stop asking how perfect it is and what can I do more to make it perfect. And I changed my criteria to, does this work? And I would say that this is the most practical question that I could ask myself. Just accept the fact that the track is never finished. And it's what I can do at this moment. Declaring something good enough for now does not make me, a bad music producer. It's just a strategic decision to prioritize finishing the track and the slow, invisible growth. So remember not to obsess over all the small pieces, because nobody will listen to your individual stems, but a full song. Because even the biggest hits, the individual tracks very often sound weird by themselves, like synth with a messed up EQ, bassy guitar, or out of tune vocals. If it serves a purpose in the context of the full mix, it's all about it. It needs to work well together. Set creative constraints and deadlines. Perfectionism thrives on infinite options. Endless timeline, list of plugins, millions of samples. So it is a recipe for paralysis. And the solution to impose strict artificial limits on yourself, they don't kill creativity. They are the fuel. So the most powerful limitation, as I learned this week, was just this week, the deadline. So I had to make decisions and commit to them because there was no time for it. I had to move forward. So I also use this time blocking technique. I decide on the time I can commit to and list the priorities to work on. And beyond time, you can also limit your tools. For this challenge, I use my Sonic box. It's a selection of instruments, tools, effects. Yeah, it helped me big time because, I felt like a star. I just opened my files and everything was ready. I was just I showed up ready to record my ideas. I talked about Sonic box last week, so you can check this video if this sounds like magic. What's different from my previous tracks is that this time I decided to not use my voice. It's because I'm gonna go through some medical procedures which will exclude me from this option, but also simply because I'm very slow with lyrics. In 1 week I wouldn't write something I'm happy with, so I thought that giving myself more freedom in this area will make me better as a music producer in general, and this is my main goal. The power of a feedback loop. Perfectionism is an isolating disease. It grows inside your head, can grow very big, echoes and echoes in your mind. So after listening to your own songs hour after hour, you lose the perspective. You may hate or fully love the song, regardless of its value. So the fastest way to break the spell out of perfectionism is to have a reality check. You have few options for that. The first one is just to embrace yourself and show your work in progress, even the messy, chaotic, unfinished work to someone who you trust. But this cannot be your mom, who likes everything you do. It has to be someone with a musical opinion that you trust and respect, and who is also open to give you constructive feedback. And the second option is to establish your own feedback loop. So at the start of each track, define what are you going for. So what do you want to achieve? What's the emotion and the purpose of the song? Who is the listener? What do you want them to feel? Then you can judge your work against these goals. Turn the black hole into something with a much more clearer direction. Another powerful tool is to build a collection of your reference songs. So it should be a library where you can go to whenever you feel stuck or you want to compare the mix, arrangement, the energy, anything that is important for you. But don't pull these songs out of top 10 Spotify charts. Pick something that you personally admire, that you also know well. Because whenever you feel lost, you can just jump back to these tracks, compare it, and this is an objective way to check if your lowland is clear or like what's the best approach to mix guitar with vocals. And it's obviously not about copying, it's more about recalibrating your ears. And this is also a good thing to do in breaks when you are working on your song, just to go outside of your studio. If you're mixing, listen to some songs that you have as your references and come back fresh. Embrace the imperfect song. As a perfectionist myself, I think the most damaging thing is the belief that everything you do needs to be a masterpiece. This is an impossible standard, and then I need to remember about Kurt Cobain. That's the guy from Nirvana. You know, Nirvana had like 17 Grammys and even double the nominations while they recorded only 3 albums. And Cobain is dead for 30 years or more and people still love his music. So I think there is some truth in there. Cobain was famous for raw, unpolished songs. His entire philosophy was a rebel against the polished, overproduced songs of pop of his era in the mainstream. He often wrote lyrics at the very last stage of the process. He left some messy vocals, out-of-tune guitars in the final mixes. And these mistakes is what people are actually excited for. This is the right way to feel the music that he wrote. And he understood that the passion was more important than precision, and the purpose of art is to make you feel something and not to create perfect music. So the key is to reframe what you're doing, and the first track of this challenge is not a final judgment of my talent and skills. It's a representation of that week, not my whole life. So I'm trying to detach the ego from the outcomes and remember that each mistake is not a failure, but lesson and notification for me to know what I need to pay attention to next time when I make another track. And you have to give yourself permission to create without this huge weight of expectations. Because when you remove the pressure for a song to be that one, you have the freedom to experiment and have fun. That's where your most authentic ideas will come from. You have to accept that making tons of just good tracks is the necessary path to making a few truly great songs. Focus on volume, because the quality will come. So the final strategy brings all of these together. So prioritizing finishing songs over perfecting them. The radio host Ira Glass has a brilliant take on this topic, calling it the gap. So he said that in the beginning, your taste is a killer and you just know what good music sounds like, but your skills are not there yet. So there is a gap between what you want to make and what you can actually make. And this is the most frustrating gap. A lot of people quit during this phase. You feel discouraged. But the only way to close the gap is by producing this enormous amount of work. Because by finishing piece after piece after piece, you develop your skills to the point that this gap just gets closed and your skills match your expectations. And it's a workout. It's a practice of arrangement, sound design, mixing, mastering. There's plenty of elements. And, you can just work on one idea for 1 month, for 2 months, 6, but how much you're missing, you know? Like, if you commit to making more of the tracks faster, you will practice all of these elements multiple times across this time. So I bet that most of us are amazing at starting the idea, but how many of us can say also that we are awesome at finishing tracks? So yeah, by finishing them once a week, I try to force myself through this entire workout, 50 times over. That finishing is also a skill, and it gets stronger with repetition. The goal of mine is to build momentum, to develop my style, and also to work on my mindset and the way I perceive myself as a music producer. And I bet that the quality will just grow with time and meet my expectations. Instead of waiting for perfection, I just decided to show up with the truth of who I am right now. If you also have a project that you've been putting off because it's not ready, just ask yourself, honest question, will it ever be ready? So my full track for this week is out. You can listen to it on Bandcamp, and I'll be releasing new song every week. Click subscribe to watch the process, or join the challenge. It'll be lovely to see more of you. You can see the details in the description. The war against perfectionism is on, but it's not an overnight success, unfortunately. It's more of a daily grind, and we need to choose small wins. Remember that when you feel stuck, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're a bad musician or producer. It can be just your fear, the fear of losing control and being judged by other people. That's actually what was my case. So, the world doesn't need our flawless, perfect masterpieces forever sitting in your hard drive, because we have AI bots to write perfect music. You want pure emotions and authenticity. Give yourself a permission to be a work in progress. Just go and finish the track, finish the next one and the next one. Join me in the challenge, and this is how we'll kill perfectionism and bring your music back to life. I'm sharing 5 strategies